Buckle up for a wild tale from the synthetic oracle. Get ready to dive into the bizarre mystery of Crow Creek and its Native American roots. 700 years ago, something unspeakable happened in the American wilderness. 500 souls vanished in a single night of terror that archaeologists still whisper about in hushed tones. In 1978, archaeologists began digging at Crow Creek, expecting routine findings. What they unearthed instead would haunt them forever and rewrite everything we knew about prehistoric violence. The year was 1325. 4 centuries before Columbus, a thriving Arikara village held secrets that would chill the blood of modern forensic experts who dared to piece together its final hours. 486 skeletons lay scattered like broken dolls across the excavation site. Men, women, children. Their bones telling a story of unimaginable brutality that defied explanation. But this wasn't simply murder. The ritualistic nature of the mutilations suggested something far more sinister, something that spoke to beliefs about the very nature of the human soul. 90% of the skulls bore the unmistakable marks of scalping. But for the Arikara, this wasn't just taking trophies, it was condemning souls to eternal torment. According to Arikara belief, the scalped dead could never enter the afterlife. Their spirits would wander forever, trapped between worlds, seeking vengeance on those who wronged them. The attackers didn't stop at scalping. 40% of skulls showed fatal cranial fractures. 25% were completely decapitated. What drove them to such systematic brutality? Among the dead, few young women or adult men were found. The attackers had taken the women as captives. But where did they disappear to in the vast American wilderness? 2 skulls bore evidence of previous scalping attempts that had healed. These survivors had escaped death once before, but their luck had finally run out. After the massacre, something even more disturbing occurred. The bodies were left to rot for weeks, torn apart by wolves and coyotes in a deliberate act of spiritual desecration. In the heavy darkness of that haunting night, shadowy figures slipped back to the killing grounds. They moved like whispers among the scattered bones, gathering what was left of their loved ones. But the secrets they shared in the dark were never heard. The Arikara weren't the only tribe practicing scalping. Across North America, dozens of tribes engaged in this ritual warfare. But why? What ancient knowledge drove this practice? The Blackfoot knew something the Arikara had forgotten. Hands hold memories, arms carry strength, feet remember sacred paths. Each severed limb they claimed wasn't just a trophy, it was stealing pieces of the soul itself. Gabriel Sagard witnessed Huron warriors returning from battle in 1624, carrying fresh scalps on poles. He described ceremonies so disturbing that his religious order tried to suppress his writings. Scalping wasn't just a European thing, you know. Archaeological finds show this practice was around long before any white folks arrived in America. In 1820, a Seneca chief claimed the Great Spirit told his people to abandon scalping. But was this divine intervention, or something more sinister, trying to hide ancient truths? When Europeans saw scalping rituals, something dark sparked in their minds. They didn't just take the practice, they twisted it, ditching its spiritual roots and leaving only a thirst for blood. In Pennsylvania, citizens demanded scalp bounties after Indian attacks. The governor's response unleashed a reign of terror that consumed both innocent and guilty alike. Father Leluder offered 1,800 silver pieces for 18 English scalps. A Catholic priest turning God's house into a marketplace for human remains. What had possessed him? Conrad Weiser witnessed the Pennsylvania scalp bounty debates. He watched civilization crumble as bloodlust consumed both settler and savage in an endless cycle of revenge. But let's return to Crow Creek. What triggered the massacre of 1325? Was it territorial dispute, resource competition, or something far more mysterious lurking in the American wilderness? Climate data suggests severe drought conditions in 1325. Desperate tribes might kill for water rights. But this level of systematic brutality suggests deeper, more primal motivations. Ancient star charts hide a wild secret. Back in 1325, the stars lined up in a way they hadn't for ages. Our ancestors called it the Night of Bleeding Stars and feared what it might unleash. The bite marks on the bones weren't from the attackers. Wild animals desecrated the corpses for weeks, while something prevented proper burial. Why did the attackers leave immediately after the massacre? What force drove them to abandon the spoils of war and flee into the wilderness without claiming their prize? The Arikara survivors who buried their dead never returned to Crow Creek. It became cursed ground, shunned by all tribes for generations. What did they know that we don't? Modern psychics claim the Crow Creek site emanates negative energy. Paranormal investigators report unexplained phenomena, electronic equipment failures, temperature drops, disembodied voices. Local farmers avoid the area. Cattle refuse to graze nearby. Even wild animals seem to sense something wrong with the land itself, as if the earth remembers the horror. The scalping ritual served multiple purposes: preventing afterlife entry, claiming spiritual power, and marking territory. But at Crow Creek, something went beyond normal tribal warfare. Mass graves from this period appear across North America, but none match Crow Creek's systematic brutality. This wasn't just war. It was extermination with religious fervor. The missing young men suggest they died in battle elsewhere. But where? No corresponding battlefield has ever been found. Did they simply vanish into the American wilderness? Some skulls showed evidence of ritualistic drilling. Trepanation performed while victims were still alive. Were they trying to release souls, extract knowledge, or invite something in? The pattern of wounds suggests the killers knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't random violence. It was systematic spiritual warfare, following ancient protocols. Carbon dating confirms the massacre occurred in autumn 1325, harvest time when villages were most vulnerable, but also when spiritual barriers were believed to be thinnest. The Nebraska State Historical Society reburied the remains in 1981, but some say the dead are not at rest. Their spirits still wander, seeking justice for crimes that time cannot erase. Witnesses at the 1981 reburial reported strange phenomena: sudden temperature drops, unexplained sounds, equipment malfunctions. Were the spirits trying to communicate something important? The Crow Creek Massacre remains one of archaeology's most disturbing discoveries. But it raises chilling questions. What other mass graves lie hidden across America, waiting to reveal their secrets? Modern DNA analysis reveals the attackers came from multiple tribes, united in purpose. What could have forged such an unlikely alliance for mass extermination? Some researchers suggest the massacre was a ritual sacrifice on a massive scale. But sacrifice to what? What ancient forces demanded 500 human lives in a single night? The positioning of bodies follows patterns found in other ritual sites worldwide, patterns that suggest knowledge of forces modern science refuses to acknowledge. Local tribal elders still refuse to discuss Crow Creek in detail. Their ancestors passed down warnings about speaking of the dead, warnings that may have saved lives. There's something they don't want you to know about Crow Creek. Modern satellite imagery reveals geometric patterns in the soil, patterns that shouldn't exist naturally. What force carved these designs into the earth itself? 7 centuries later, Crow Creek's secrets remain buried, but the questions haunt us. What drove humans to such systematic brutality? And what other horrors sleep beneath American soil? The Crow Creek Massacre flips our understanding of prehistoric America upside down. What do you think went down that night in 1325? Drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe the channel to stay in touch.